You know that feeling, right? You go to your favorite website, and poof, it's just gone. Well, for a huge chunk of the internet, that's exactly what happened for a few hours back on November 18th, 2025. And no, it wasn't your Wi-Fi acting up. The problem was way, way bigger. It came from one of the most important but kind of invisible giants of the web. So let's get into it and figure out what happens when a company like that has a really, really bad day.
So, this is what it looked like. At 11:48 UTC, this alert started popping up. Now, for most of us, that doesn't mean much. But for system administrators, the people who keep the internet running, this message sent a shiver down their spine. This wasn't just a little hiccup. This was a bright, flashing warning sign that something was going very wrong with the very foundation that literally thousands of websites are built on.
And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. I mean, what does happen when a pillar of the internet starts to wobble? We all use the web every single day, but we don't really think about the plumbing, right? The companies that keep it all working. So when one of them stumbles, what are the consequences? Well, as we're about to see, the ripple effect is massive, and it's actually pretty crucial to understanding the internet we're all a part of. All right, Section 1, Cloudflare, the invisible giant. So before we can really dig into what went wrong, we've got to talk about who we're even talking about, and that company is Cloudflare. They're one of those businesses that you've probably interacted with like a dozen times today, and you wouldn't even have a clue. They're kind of the internet's silent partner, working behind the scenes to make everything you do online faster and safer.
Okay, so here's their own definition. They say they provide performance and security. Simple enough, right? But what does it actually mean? Well, you can think of them as a combination of a bodyguard and a super-fast delivery service for websites. When you try to visit a site that uses Cloudflare, you don't actually go straight to the website's own server. Nope, you're first routed through Cloudflare's massive global network. It's like a VIP entrance for your internet traffic.
And man, they do a lot. On the performance side, they use something called a CDN, which basically just means they stash copies of a website in servers all over the world, so it loads way faster for you. For security, they're like a digital bouncer, blocking things like DDoS attacks. That's when someone tries to crash a website by flooding it with a ridiculous amount of fake traffic. They also handle reliability, developer tools, the whole shebang. The bottom line is, they're not just some add-on. They are woven right into the fabric of how a website works.
And because they're so deeply integrated, when something goes wrong, it goes wrong everywhere. I mean, just look at this. This data is straight from their status page during the incident. Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, you name it, every single continent had a partial outage. This wasn't just, one server in a basement going down. This was a global problem.
Okay, so now that we get the scale of this thing, let's jump into the anatomy of an outage. We're going to take a minute-by-minute look at what happened on November 18th. I mean, how does a company even begin to fix a problem that's affecting the entire planet? Well, lucky for us, they're pretty transparent, so we can actually watch how it all unfolded through their public updates.
All right, here's the play-by-play. 11:48 UTC, the first alert goes up. They're investigating. You can just imagine the frantic activity behind the scenes. Then, just over an hour later at 13:09, boom, identified. They found the problem. That's actually incredibly fast. And just 4 minutes after that, things start coming back online. By 13:35, they're in full-on restoring mode. So think about that. In under 2 hours, they went from a planet-wide problem to actively fixing it. Pretty impressive.
So, we're on to our next section. Outage, glitch, or maintenance. Because, an event like this is super dramatic. But if you look at a company's status page, you see a lot of issues. And it's really important to know that not all of them are like a total catastrophe. This helps us get a handle on how often these big, scary outages actually happen.
So let's put two different kinds of updates side by side. On one hand, you've got the major outage. This is the bad one, unplanned, critical, the thing that makes everyone panic. On the other hand, you've got scheduled maintenance. This is planned, totally under control, and just normal. The engineers in Santiago knew this was going to happen. It's really the difference between a bridge suddenly collapsing versus a planned construction project where they put up signs and create detours. Totally different worlds.
And this right here really puts it all into perspective. This is a snapshot of November 18th, what was, a terrible day for Cloudflare. You see the two major incidents. Okay, bad. But now look at the third bar. More than 15 active maintenance events. So even on a day when a crisis is happening, most of the work is just routine, planned improvements. The big outages are what grab all the attention. But the real story is this constant, behind-the-scenes work to keep things running.
Okay, next up, the ripple effect and prevention. This is the big so what? Why does one company having a bad day break so much of the internet? And maybe more importantly for some of you, if you're running a website, what can you actually do to protect yourself? Let's get into it.
This is pretty wild. Even during the worst part of the outage, check this out. 95% of Cloudflare services were still humming along just fine, listed as operational. So what was the big deal? Well, the problem was that the small 3 to 5% that did fail, they were the absolute most important ones, the core services. It's kind of like if your car's engine dies. Yeah, the radio still works, the AC is blowing cold air, the windows go up and down, but the car isn't going anywhere. That's what happened here.
So if you run a website, what's the game plan? Here are a few really crucial steps. First up, you've got to know your dependencies. Who are all the third-party services you rely on? Make a list. Second, watch their status pages like a hawk. Subscribe to them. Don't let your customers be the ones that tell you your site is down. Third, and this is for the big players, think about fallbacks. Maybe you use more than one CDN provider, so if one goes down, the other can pick up the slack. And last but not least, communicate. Have a plan ready to let your own users know what's going on.
And just to leave you with one last number that really drives home the sheer complexity of all this. Look at that, 120. That's how many of Cloudflare's individual services were still working perfectly fine, even while the main network was having a crisis. It's just a mind-boggling number. It reminds you that these companies aren't just running a single program. They're managing these huge, sprawling ecosystems where one tiny failure can have massive, massive consequences. So all of this leaves us with a really big, kind of tough question about the future of the internet. On the one hand, having these giants like Cloudflare makes things way faster and safer for all of us, no doubt about it. But it also creates these single points of failure that can take down a huge chunk of the web in an instant. So as we build more and more of our digital world on top of these few massive platforms, you have to ask, are we actually making the internet stronger, or are we making it more fragile? It's definitely something to chew on the next time your favorite site just disappears.